started right away. Welcome to our final session of the 2020 Spring Cohort. Talk up today's session on social media. Make sure you're tagging the GNOME. If you're talking about our teams, make sure you're tagging our teams that are going to share today. We're glad you're here. We're glad that you're taking a moment to learn about these amazing projects that have been working all semester long, and I'm excited for them to share their learning. So next cohort in the fall starts on September 5th. You can sign up at xAPIcohort.com. And like I said, this is our final web session of the Spring 2020 xAPI Learning Cohort. Before we get started, I have an activity that I want to try. So y'all I'm going to give you in 1 second drawing rights, so you'll be able to mark up and annotate on this slide. And we want to know how you're feeling about the Spring xAPI cohort and what you've learned. And then in the chat, tell us why. Tell us why you're feeling that way or why you picked that animal. So you can grab your marker, pick a color, and just star or dot or mark up the image that's most closely related to how you feel about Spring Cohort. I'll give you about 30 seconds to do that. And then let us know in the chat why you marked that up. I'm not sure what happened.
Sorry, I typed and I taken over.
No problem. Let's get the slides back on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, so the bottom right arrow, if you click on that, that might get rid of the slides, is what we learned.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let us know. I see Joanne has learned a lot. We have folks that have gotten the ball and are ready to run. Awesome. We're glad that you had such a productive and fun time learning in cohort, and folks were on great teams. Thanks for sharing, everyone. So today's agenda, we have Team Makey Makey, Team Early Childhood Education, Team Adaptive Learning, and Team Audio Video. They're going to present out their projects and give little demos, and you'll have a couple of minutes to ask questions, but if there are any questions that go unanswered, you can always still use the Slack channel, and then any of these teams can also present at the xAPI party and have more time to share out. Good afternoon, everyone. So we're wrapping up cohort with 515 members registered for Spring 2020, which is really, really excited and right in line with some goals. We already have 8 folks registered for the Fall 2020 cohort. So I gave you the website, but if you're interested in signing up for cohort, it is www.xapicohort.com, and you can sign up for Fall today. Behind the mics today, we have Aaron Steller and Jamie Washington, our amazing producers who are helping to keep us on track, and will answer any questions you have around technical difficulties. And then I'm Jess, and I'm the host of Cohort. Just want to remind everyone that we do have the xAPI party and download coming up. At the end of the session, I will share the links on how to sign up for those, but we are really excited about that. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it over to Brian, who's going to share about Team Makey Makey.
Thank you. Welcome to the Team Makey Makey presentation. It's like presenter still cycling for everybody. There's the slides. The team members for Team Makey Makey include Joanne, our HTML and JavaScript wizard, Doug, our JSON Jetty, Helen was our PowerPoint guru, and I'm Brian, your live code and Makey Makey minion. First, we want to acknowledge some of the inspiration we received from Megan commenting on the importance of context within xAPI during the March 19th cohort meeting, which was week number 8. Additional steps for preparing in the project were included here. I'm going to have to roll along because we're crunching for time. So for setting the stage, part of our project description included launching a prototype application as a learning record provider using a learning response board attached via Makey to send xAPI statements to a learning record store. Our secondary objective including building a stage 1 application using the Makey board that allowed users to validate the boards connected, working properly, and sending messages to their computer. This app would also assist in troubleshooting the Makey configuration. We have some success criteria, including building a live code community project, collaborating with team members within the xAPI cohort, connecting the app with a prototype learning response board, and leveraging that app and Makey board to generate and record xAPI statements with descriptive verbs and context information. So this is an example of what that Makey board looks like. The Makey kit started as a project by 2 MIT students on Kickstarter. It functions as an invention kit enabling students, teachers, inventors, and entrepreneurs to design and build interactions with objects that can be captured as keyboard input to the computer. It abstracts the computer from the end user as they only need to interact with the objects connected with the Makey board. We'll see examples of this in a moment. The physical appearance is a circuit board that connects to a computer via USB. It can be implemented to accept inputs from clicks, push button, touch, or a joystick. These holes that are shown in the board are attachment points for alligator clips. And again, we'll show some images showing how that's used. Here's one now. Our first prototype learning response board was designed as a physical input device for developmentally disabled individuals. Keep in mind this image shows how it looked in development, not how it would have been presented to our audience. So you see the Makey board on the left, and all the alligator clips are connecting to aluminum tape on this board. We'll get into a little details on this a little further along. I just need to move through this briefly. So our second prototype included an arcade box and a joystick configuration that was built as a response to some of the limitations found in that alpha response board. We were able to locate components for an arcade joystick and button box via eBay and Amazon. The cost for this was about $50, but they were pre-configured and the board itself was pre-cut, so we didn't really have the ability to add in room for our answer sheet, which is shown in the previous slide. Again, we'll come back to that in a moment here. Should be progressing. So the process we went through includes stage 1, building the app for testing, connecting the board, and it provided feedback via beeps and blinks. And then stage 2 was building our alpha learning response board prototype. Stage 3 was building software as a learning record provider. Stage 4 included integration of the 2 pieces of software that we built for stage 1 and stage 2. And then stage 5 is the beta response board. We're going to elaborate on each of these briefly. And I do want to mention there's a abundance of detail that we put up into GitHub. So stage 1 was building this app for setup and testing the Makey, which is shown here with some of the alligator clips connected. And then the software, I'm getting a little lag here. Here we go. The stage 1 app was built as a live code community project, connecting the Makey board, and is designed to beep and blink to show feedback if the board is properly connected. So this is an actual screen grab of the app that was compiled as a standalone, which didn't require the live code development environment for running. So it's published to multiple platforms, and these applications and source code are both published on GitHub. As I mentioned, it's dual purpose, to troubleshoot and assist with setup. There we go. The back of the board is shown here. To set up the Makey, all they needed to do was plug the board in via USB. Each of the lights on the front of the board would cycle on to show that it was receiving connections and then turn off. And then the red power light on the back of the board remains lit to show that it's connected via USB. So this is some of the detail that we provide on the GitHub about using the app for testing and troubleshooting. We don't really have time here to detail it and step through it. And then we also have details on troubleshooting. So stage 2 was the Alpha Learning Response Board, also known as the Ping Pong Ball Board. That board is shown here. The Stage 2 Learning Response Board was that alpha prototype. We used it to test the ability to interact with the software from Stage 1. We did notice that many statements could be sent from a single touch. This board is built basically with Home Depot components costing about 20 bucks. And the shiny part you see is aluminum tape. The white balls are actually half-cut ping pong balls. And what we found is there was quite a bit of resistance in this setup. So someone touching the board would actually tend to touch it longer and send multiple statements. So that became a limitation we needed to get over. So we'll come back to that issue in a moment here. So stage 3, we built software acting as learning record provider. In that software, the learning record provider accepts input from the Makey board as keyboard input, then sends an xAPI statement to the learning record store using the xAPI wrapper JavaScript library. So again, this was our live code project. The early board was a separate live code project from stage 1. We built this software to test accessing a web file via local URL, which utilized a local web server. We verified that the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript libraries would interact within live code as they would on a web page. And then we modified the xAPI wrapper JavaScript files for use in a different SwarmCloud account. This allowed us to customize where the statements were being sent. So stage 4, we integrated the two pieces of software, and this screenshot is an example of that software. The learning record provider then accepts input from the Makey board as keyboard input, as I mentioned, sending the appropriate xAPI statements to the learning record store using that JavaScript library. So up above on the screen, we actually see a web browser that's integrated with the app, and then down below we see the Makey board, and then this is the extension we needed to add based on the added inputs of the arcade box board. So this sort of shows that on the left we see that stage 1, the key points for stage 1 and stage 3, that we created standalone apps that were compiled. We could publish to multiple platforms and publish that on GitHub. Then when we combined them in stage 4, we added the ability to connect to either remote web-hosted or local computer-hosted web pages. We extended the keyboard interactions via an extension board that we'll show later, and then we provided links out to GitHub and xAPI Cohort pages. We also, the buttons connecting between local and remote also allow the ability to navigate back to the initial web page. So there's a video that we were going to link to within GitHub from our GitHub wiki that'll let you see a demo of the application in use. And then stage 5 is our beta learning response board, or the arcade box board. So the arcade, finally for stage 5, we assembled and tested the arcade box and integrated it with the Makey board. The initial design features buttons that limit the likelihood of multiple responses. They also provide tactile interaction via click as feedback to the user. So they're physically holding that button down will only send a single statement, but the user also feels the click as they push it down, which reduces the likelihood of them sending multiple statements. And on the right, we'll come back to this, but on the right is our example of the questions, one of the questions we would ask. So these images show a little more detail about that Makey board and some of the wiring that was involved. And then finally we have a zoom in slide showing the wiring to the Makey board. This was the extension board we located that allow us to use some of the added features of the board that are available underneath if you actually plug wires in. This allowed us to use the same alligator clip interface that the rest of the board uses. So as a summary of our project activities, we went through the effort of downloading and customizing JavaScript files for two libraries that we use. The top one is the xAPI wrapper JavaScript library, and then secondarily, the xAPI wrapper uses the Crypto.js wrapper to actually encrypt the information that it's sending and receiving to the LRS. This slide shows the customization. There are only 3 lines that required edits to change the target LRS for the statements being generated. So we edited these 3 lines and were able to transfer information, I shouldn't say transfer, but to target a different learning record store than was initially set up. So it was extremely reconfigurable. And then the other thing we needed to do was edit the project JavaScript library. Finally, I want to take us through a few of the pieces of information about the statements. On the left side, we see the Storm Cloud statements that are received from the received to the LRS. In the middle is the updated view of the statements received from our application, and then on the right is the full text JSON that we used. And we're going to go through this in a couple more slides. I'll zoom in on it and show some of the detail. So again, I want to pull this back and say, in the final version of the project, we built the push button learning record provider and aligned it by color coding with the question statement that we have here. So each colored button corresponds to one of the buttons on the box, and the color coding allowed the learner to identify which button to click. The submit button is envisioned to move forward to the next question, and the retry button would be used to send a void statement to the learning record store to allow an updated answer if they wanted to retry the question. So here we dive into the JSON. In bullet 1, the function is triggered when the letter F is received. This is a response that is received from the Makey board. Bullet 2 indicates that this tells us the yellow button had been clicked. And bullet 3 shows that the learner was indicating the answer they were choosing was he built her a fine house. In this slide, we see bullet 4 indicates that the verb used was selected. Bullet 5 indicates that this aligns with the designated correct answer where success equals true. And bullet 6 shows that we provided feedback to the user via JavaScript alerts to indicate the color of the button clicked and the corresponding keystroke that was reported. So down here, we've added in this detail on this slide showing that the context received shows Anna Johnson correctly selected yellow for question 27 as a result of that JavaScript. One other thing I want to mention, when we use live code scripting in the app, we don't really have time to dive into that. There is a video out in YouTube. We have a link to it from our GitHub that details the English-like scripting language for live code. One key point I'd make is that the Stage 1 app was created in less than 70 lines of code, and that's the app that's shown here for troubleshooting and configuring the Makey board. So discoveries and lessons learned. one of the key points. Some of the discoveries our team discussed are shown here. One key point, which we all agreed, was that sending statements to the LRS with context, we were able to receive interpretations from the LRS beyond what was sent. And this example is shown at the top. On the bottom line, where Doug selected W, that was our initial response received. Once we revised the JavaScript and JSON, we were able to receive back from the Learning Record Store that Anna Johnson had incorrectly selected blue for question 27. So these final couple slides, first we have a list of resources that I've mentioned. So the GitHub, our Slack is still available. We're Team Makey Makey, and within the GitHub, there are docs, videos, and our team notes that allow you to allow you to extrapolate some of the information that we've published there. And then the Makey Makey blog is at makeymakey.com/blog/blog, and LiveCode Community is available for free download at livecode.org. So finally, I just want to say thanks, and our whole team Makey Makey wants to say thanks to Megan and Torrance Learning for the support that we've received through the xAPI cohort.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian and Team Makey Makey. I know that Doug is in the chat answering questions as well. If you have any questions for Team Makey Makey's project, go ahead and put those in the chat. We'll spend about a minute waiting for that, and then we can go on to our next team. Thank you so much, Brian. That was so cool.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. By all means, questions in the chat or in the Slack.
Absolutely, in the Slack channel. So I've waited a few seconds. I'm going to move on to ECE. I'm sure Brian and Doug are in the chat, and you can use the Slack channel to ask any questions if you didn't have a chance to do so. So Joanne, I'm going to transition to your presentation now and pass over the mic to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, so this project is for the early childhood education, and it's a continuation of the project that was done in the fall cohort of 2019. And so in the earlier cohort, we had focused on the general care interactions. This time I wanted to focus on the milestones and achievements. And so the goals of this then were to explore the ebook Pebble that was highlighted also in the fall cohort, using xAPI and then using CAS for the competencies. And if we have a viable product, at some point I'd like to propose it to Promise Venture Studios. And so then that's goals 2 and 3. But the focus of this presentation is really on meeting the goal 1. And so the scope of this was the ECE profile that I have the link there to profile number 61, and then also a link to the CDC. And so what I did was I just extracted those milestones so that I could start working with some kind of competency level things. I would like to maybe go into something like Common Core or something like that at some point, but for this is just for the early childhood education. So the first part of this is what I wanted to do is really focus on the send statement. What is all the content objects that I can extract from that? And so here is the milestone checklist that I built for the app. And then over to the right, you'll see those are all the different fields within the xAPI statement that are being collected for. And so here it's just select the child, which would be the actor, the age, which would be the age level. So for each one of these, then I'm capturing this information to go into this statement. And so then here you can see, like I made, child's 18 months, and this is the caregiver that is recording this as evidence, and then they can upload a video showing that this child did this, and then there's a field for them to record what was happening, and so the comments. And so then this is all the information that I've included in the send statement. And as with the Makey team, we really, I try to focus in on really making rich context. And so instead of just being the actor, the verb, and the object, I really felt that if we could go into the result, if we do true for mastered, I can get some things to happen. Or if I use for the verb progress, if I change and I use the result with score, I can get different, different content out of the LRS later on. And so it depends on how I'm setting up these statements. Then also is I use the context activities by identifying what the framework is, and then also doing prerequisites and post-requisites or supports and extensions. And so then I'm able to link into those and then be able to use those context hooks to then build out other things, as you'll see later on. And then attachments too. So this was the evidence being built in, and so it's collecting the content type, the attachments, and then the URL where the evidence was uploaded. Right, so then here's in SquirmPlug when I sent the statements over, then it would just say, okay, child mastered, and I just focused on the mastered verbs for this presentation. And then this would be the 18 months is the age, and then this is the competency that they had done. Okay. So then again, this is the statement detail that is output then from SCORM, and again, you'll see what I'm going to do throughout this is just keep following these content objects through so that you can see how they can be used by collecting them and then working with them. And so again, here's just a close-up because it's so hard to see that, but it's just, here's the statement that was output by SCORM, and it's just the actor and the verb. Then here is my object, and then this is how I'm using the object is by doing the competency, and this one has 18 months in it, and then the type is a competence, the object type is activity. Okay, then in the context too, again, I think I explained this earlier, is that I just wanted to be able to get the age level, I'm able to get the agent and the instructor who's recording this, and then the framework, and then the supports and the extension content. Attachments, and then again, this is the upload of the file URL and then the results, and I can play with those different things. All right, so here's implementation examples, and so then that's where I was working with the Pebble group, and I was testing their InDesign plugins, and I was able to come up with like an assertion board. I did a checklist. I was able to come up with, just the different images and videos, and working with the Pebble team, and then hopefully as they progress, then I can also progress with them as well. Then this is the competency and skills system, CAS, that's ADL. And so for me, it's very important that we stay with standards, and I think that once you have standards, and then once you're able to be interoperable in so many different ways, and I hope that this is showing that. And so here again, like all of these arrows are things that I've collected in my statements, and they align perfectly to CAS, and so then I'm able to then use the xAPI stuff and also the CAS. Then here's products that can then be built using, again, the same content that I had before, the actor, the age level, the evidence, the competency, and so we can build books. Here it's like it's a fiction book, but it's the same thing. It's like you can bring in those evidence, pictures of evidence, and then also the support context and the extension context that's available, and then build all the different products using the same content that's from them. So the way that you do that then, instead of sending statements, that's where we have to get the statements. And so then that's where the code over here on the left is showing how then what we could do is set up an HTML page like on the right, where I just have to click this button that says generate data, and then it's whatever fields that I've filtered through here over on the left, and then I can just extract that data from the LRS. I'm just going up to SCORM and saying, give me just these pieces of data. And so of course, if it's within the environment of the classroom or the daycare center, then we can have the child and the agent there. But if we wanted to subtract that personal information out of that, I can just then say generate data, and I can subtract out all that personal information, but then I'm still getting all of that rich data that I can then send to research and I can send to data analysis. But then here I'm just showing you very simply just output things that I've done. And then again, here is just, I just can set up this, code, and then I could just run generate cast data, and then it would run out all that data. And of course I wouldn't do it in this format, I would do it in a JSON format, but just to show you that it's very easy to do this. Then again, here's, this is where I'm really interested in going to working with Pebble and things like that. But then it's like, because I had that URL in there, then I can just populate this. And so I can make a memory book for, parents or the grandparents based on all of this, rich data that was captured for, analysis and assessments and different things like that. But it's still, it's like there's a lot of different products that could just come out of that same by just using that get. And so just the next steps are I'm signing up then for the fall cohort because I want to continue this. And then I just wanted to share that this Udemy class, xAPI Fundamentals, I believe that they're having sales now for like $10.99, $11.99, $13.99. But I found this class to be very instrumental in helping me with the send and get statements. And then again, I use the Swarm Cloud. And then, as Brian said ahead of me, it's just thank Megan and everything for sponsoring this cohort. It's amazing, the amount of things that I've learned in this, and it's what I really, I love to do this. I mean, that's all I have. If anyone has any questions,
Thank you so much, Joanne. This is so awesome to see it grow from even last semester to see what you're producing, and the ebook is really exciting for me. If there are any questions for Joanne, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll wait a few seconds to see if any are populated. If we don't get to your questions, feel free to continue to engage in the chat here, or you can go right to the Team Early Childhood Education Slack channel and continue the conversation there. So I'll wait and see if any questions come through. Alrighty, I'm going to transition over to Team Audio Video, and Sarah, I believe you are on the line to share your demo. Hey Sarah, if you're speaking, we can't hear you right now. Have you linked your mic? There you are.
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Let's see here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I think if you turn, yes, we can hear you. Can you hear me, Joanne? Sarah?
Okay, one last time. Can you hear me? I'm sorry about this. I see Megan said yes, you can, and I will just go with it if anyone can hear me. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so we had a very sort of humble goal in learning this. This is our team, Jason, myself, Dave, Helena, and Jeremy. And Jeremy really carried a lot of the project here. Just to make sure that you guys can see. Okay, emojis. Okay, okay, you can hear me, and hopefully you can see my screen. Okay, so
Oh, I think we lost Sarah. So what we're going to do while we wait for Sarah to join us back is jump into Team Adaptive Learning. Brady, are you ready to present?
I can, sure, yeah.
Brady, okay, perfect. Your mic is a little hot.
Oh, okay.
So you're gonna share your screen, Brady? All right, that sounds better. Your yup sounded a little better.
Okay. So I am one part of Team Adaptive Learning. We had a lot of interested people on the team. There are probably some people that I missed in here, so sorry about that, but there was a lot of good participation. Our goal was to create an xAPI and machine learning powered adaptive learning module that sequences content in real time. We learned that that was a very ambitious goal. Unfortunately, we didn't get very close to reaching the goal, but we did build a really good foundation that we're going to continue on with in the fall. And there's a lot of interest in the project, so not worried about carrying it forward. So just a little bit of a justification on why we chose to do this project. I think it's always interesting to look back at some of the educational models that support the technology things. So one of the things that inspired this project was work done by Bloom called Mastery Learning. And what he did research on and what he determined was that nearly all students can reach a high level of achievement given the right time and learning conditions. So the traditional, conventional way of instruction is to provide some instruction to a group of learners, give them an assessment, and then basically move on. And it doesn't matter if some people did really well, some people didn't do quite as well. You can move on, and it's a way of performing instruction efficiently, but it's not necessarily the best way to do it. So what Bloom suggested is that you do the traditional instruction, then you move to the formative assessment, and then based on the results of that assessment, you supply students with corrective activities that align with what they hadn't mastered in the based on the results of the assessment. So after they do those corrective activities, then they move to another formative assessment that's slightly different, that focuses on the things that they didn't master. And for the students who did really well in the formative assessment, it seemed like they mastered the content. They don't get anything. It's not like they don't get anything. They get supplied with enrichment activities that sort of broadens your understanding of the subject. So this is some other work by Benjamin Bloom. It's called the 2 Sigma graph. And basically what it describes is that students who are tutored one-to-one using the mastery method perform 2 standard deviations better than the conventional method of instruction. And also, I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but this intersection here shows that only 20% of the conventional class reached what 90% of the one-on-one tutored students reached. So it's obviously a very good way to teach students. Obviously, the big problem with this is that it requires a lot of teachers and tutors, which is not feasible. So the big question here is how can this how can you reproduce the success of mastery learning, the one-on-one tutoring with technology. It lends itself very well to adaptive learning, as you can kind of see, because what's happening with the corrective activities that are used by mastery learning techniques is that they're basically adapting. They're saying, you're not good in this area, you're not good in this area, we're going to give you some different activities that help out in those areas. And so as a group, we basically determined that there are 7 steps that we need to take at a very high level to reproduce this. The first thing is we just need a way to offer content. So as an admin or as a teacher, we need some way to create content. We need to be able to tag that content with a difficulty level, and we use the Bloom's taxonomy levels to do that. We need to also tag it with a learning objective, and we need to tag it with a content type. And those are all things that, all information that we need to properly sequence content. We need to find some way to present the content to learners, whether that's some kind of planning framework, whether that's a content management system. We need to be able to send xAPI statements based on the interactions from the students to the learning record store. Once all of that data is in a learning record store, we need to make that data available to a machine learning model. And whether that's done after every interaction, whether that's done at a batch level, nightly, monthly, that's a big question mark still. Once we have all that data, we need to be able to train and tweak the model based on some earlier results. And then we need to be able to deploy the model in such a way that we can send it data or information. In this case, what piece of content do we want to present the learner next? So we need to be able to send them that data in such a way that it returns results on the fly. So it could just say slide ID 3 or something like that. So the data points, went over this briefly in the last slide, that we needed to capture. I'm sure there's probably more, but this is what we could think of. We need to know how long it takes a student to complete or finish a piece of content or an assessment. When a student is doing an assessment, we want to know if they're accessing hints. We want to know how they performed on assessment, and we want to know what they reported their existing knowledge was. And I've actually seen some interesting stuff on in some adaptive learning products that I've seen. When a question is presented, one of the ones that I saw give the learner the opportunity to say, I don't know this, I think I know this, I do know this. So that's really important because let's say a student answers the question correctly, but they say, I don't know this, it's likely it's a guess. And so the sequencer, the algorithm, or whatever you're using, should probably give them some supplemental content and then another assessment. So again, the high-level steps to build an adaptive learning system. You need to build an expert model or a knowledge map, and I'll go over that in the next slide. So that's basically what the desired state of every learner after they've completed the module. You have to find out some way to build that model in whatever system that you're using. Then you have to build the learner model. It's similar to the expert model, only that it represents the current state of the learner's knowledge at a given time. So at the beginning of the module, the learner model is, for the most part, blank. And then as you progress through the model, it gets updated, and hopefully it aligns very, very, very closely to the expert model at the end. And you need to build a tutor, and in this case, it's the algorithm that sequences the content that decides what content to present next based on the current state of the learner. And then you need to create an interface, just a way to display content. So this is an example of a knowledge map. On the left, it actually looks like a map. So that's one way to display it. On the right is a bulleted list. And so it's the same information, it's the same kind of information structure. The bulleted list on the right is actually from the xAPI GitHub documentation. And we actually decided to use xAPI as our topic in the module that we had hoped to build. So now I will just go, I'll go to our Google Doc that we created that holds our expert model. This is not complete because we didn't finish. And then we also go over a way to populate this with content. So this is literally very close to a copy and paste of the GitHub documentation. And so what we did is under each of these, what we're calling nodes, so under the introduction node, we had created some learning objectives. So somebody needs to be able to explain what the xAPI is, you need to describe the history, you need to explain why it was developed, and so on and so on. So we went in and populated these, and then there's a table down here where we aligned a piece of content. I cannot, yes. I don't think I'm sharing my screen anymore. Am I?
Excellent. Hey, Torrance team, can we move that pod onto the main, the looks like the pod got closed. Thanks.
I think I'm back. Am I good to continue? Okay, perfect. So this is the piece of content that we created, and this is from the GitHub documentation as well. This is the node. This is where we got it. We gave it a difficulty level of a 1 to a 3. We gave it a content type, and then we aligned it with an assessment. This is just a multiple choice question. So the idea was we were going to go through this expert model and create content assessments for each one of these things. And then I'll just quickly go to the plugin that we created. So it's called WP Adaptive. In the plugin, there are 2 post types. One is module, and one is node. Sorry, there are 3 post types. One is module, one is node, one is assessment. And then there are 2 taxonomies. And a taxonomy in WordPress, if you're familiar with it, it's a tag or a category, and it's just a way to basically organize information. So a module at the high level is just a container for a series of nodes and assessments. So in this case, the module is xAPI. And if I go into this module, I can see the beginnings of the expert model items that we created for this. So this is probably about a tenth of the table of contents in the GitHub documentation, but we started to add this here, and if I were to add another expert model item, it would show up in the module. A node is a specific piece of content. So in this case, we have a title, we have what the text was from the Google document, tag this piece of content with an expert model item. There's a meta box down here where we can add in the object ID for xAPI purposes. And the important ones are the type of content it is, the difficulty level, and that's about it. The assessment is very similar to Node. We tag each assessment with an expert model item. So on the last screen, the content was for explaining what the xAPI is, and in this case, we're assessing it. So you write the question in here, and then these are the options right now. We support multiple choice. And then if I wanted to populate the expert model, further, I would come into expert model items and create it. So let's say if there was something below Y xAPI I would develop. I would add it in there, and it would be shown below. And so that, in terms of the plugin, is where we got. We're looking at next fall creating the interface so we can actually go through a module and figuring out.
Thank you so much for sharing, Brady. If anyone has any questions for Team Adaptive Learning, go ahead and place those in the chat. If not right now, maybe later, you can go right into their Slack channel and ask any questions there. Alrighty, so now that we're gonna move to Team Audio Video, and I will pass over the mic to Sarah. Awesome, thanks, Doug. Sarah, I don't think we can hear you as your mic. Sarah, we're not able to hear you. So you will need to connect your mic, adjust your microphone, and select your microphone at the top.
Hey there, Sarah. This is Megan Torrance. We've got a bunch of people typing at you in the chat. I wonder if in backstage chat, it might be easier and faster, Torrance Learning Team, if you come yourself off mute and walk Sarah through how to connect her audio.
Hey, Sarah, can you hear us? No, okay, and we hear you now, so that's perfect.
There we go. All right. Okay, so this is a very humble goal, so it should be pretty quick, and we should be able to meet our timeline here. Our goal was to take audio and video, to put it into an LMS and have an LRS read xAPI. And we realized very quickly in Team Audio Video that what we were actually going to have to do was take our audio video, which currently we're playing around with it in Rise, but we would like to explore some different avenues, I would at least. And then we put it into an LRS, which is SCORM Cloud, and we're embedding SCORM Cloud into Moodle, and I'm currently using Moodle Cloud, which is free. So all of the applications I'm using here are free, and Rise is normally not free, but I have a 60-day trial. So we're embedding that, and I was also able to embed xAPI reports from SCORM Cloud as well. So that was a real concern for our users, that the teachers or the managers that were using the LMS were not able to actually grab the reports and see what they were. So we did find a way to embed them into Moodle. So here's our process, pretty much. These are the applications we use, as mentioned, and what we love about this is that it's so accessible. Anyone can try it out. If you're just jumping into xAPI, like I am, like Jeremy was, this is our first time around. You can try this and completely duplicate it and see if it works for you and play around. It's not going to cost any money. So here's how we exported the Rise course. we just exported to tin can and then popped into StormCloud. We imported the file by going to Home and then adding content, and then we imported SCORM. Over here you can see that we browsed to the course and imported the course. Once we had the course in there, we created a dispatch. So we went to dispatch on the left-hand side, created a dispatch, and then we chose the course that it was supposed to be. Let's create. And then once you have it created, you pick the one that you want. So you see we selected it here, and we went to BLTI. And then that popped up this super valuable little box that has all this information that you need to input into Moodle. And so you'll see I bring this up a little bit later on, but these are directly imported into Moodle. So here's our Moodle course, and we needed to create, within a topic, we created a new activity. First, you want to turn on your editing, but if you're not familiar with Moodle, that's very important, but you do that and then create a new activity. This would be the external tool that you would utilize. It looks like a little puzzle piece. And then when you go in there, add the name, and you will really want to expand the menu right here to put all that really important stuff we just got from StormCloud into here. And then so I brought over what this window looks like in StormCloud and what you're filling in Moodle to directly show you where the different pieces of StormCloud go into your Moodle page. Then back to StormCloud, you can check out what you have, if you have any reports. So you do need to realize, if this is your first time through, that you won't have reports unless someone takes your class. So that stumped me for a good 5 minutes. then I went through and took the class, and I was good to go. So you'll see that StormCloud itself does give you some nice reports on this page. So that's when you click into the course name, it will take you to the library page. And this is what the top of the page looks like. If I scroll down, I get these nice little reports. And they are somewhat visual. But our problem was that we were not going to be able to allow managers and teachers to go beyond the LMS. They needed everything reported right in the LMS. So we go to the reportage button, and I'll show you how to add that in. So in the reportage button, you can pick what reports you like, and if you click down on here, you get this widget, and you copy paste this widget into Moodle. So in Moodle, you just add a new activity and a page, and in your WYSIWYG editor in the HTML, you pop in that widget. It's actually an iframe. And you can choose, I'm going to go back here, you can choose as many of these reports as you want, and you'll see I chose 2. And just sort of keep popping them in because they're just iframes and they're self-contained. I chose to hide it from students, and you would probably want to do that as well. That way, anyone who's a teacher or higher can view it, but the students can't. Okay, so you see this is just looks grayed out in Moodle, but anyone with a higher level authority can check it out. And this is what it looks like. So here we go. We've got some users, and this particular course I did had a quiz, and so that showed me the time it took. They passed it, and then this showed the 2 courses that I had. Okay. So there are some pros and cons. The pros were, it's awesome, it's free, we can all duplicate this, and it's fun to play around with. I didn't get too much into the statements, but I am definitely going to check out that Udemy course that that was mentioned earlier. Great tip. And the pros are also that you get more detail than you would normally with SCORM. However, this was a big con. My users were texting me. I signed up a few of my friends, and they were texting me like crazy, should I click this? So you get this pop-up when you do bring something into your LMS. It's a pop-up that comes from StormCloud. If anyone knows how to get rid of that, I would be intrigued to know. So that scares people.
especially since the hierarchy of the text here is pop up and return to LMS, and very tiny it says launch course. So, but there were the other cons might have been that the file size limitations at Squirm Cloud. I tried to put a larger video file in and it wouldn't accept it. But I'm on the free version. And then with Moodle Cloud, there was no ability to use a plugin unless you pay. So there are some beautiful visualization plugins for Moodle, but with the Moodle Cloud, which is a free version, which is very easy to set up without a developer, I was not able to add a plugin. But overall, I found it to be a success, and next steps would definitely be to move forward with more detail in the reports. Now that we know it can be captured and it can be brought back to the LMS for all users to be able to sort of see, utilize, and for those managers and teachers to be able to see the reports. Does anybody have any questions?
Awesome.
Very complicated.
Awesome. Thank you so much for presenting, Sarah. If anyone does have questions, you can feel free to use the chat, or you can head over to the Slack channel for Team Audio Video. With that, I'm going to transition back to our presentation for today and remind you that we have the xAPI party on May 7th. It is all 100% online. There are different tracks. We have 5 slots in the xAPI xAPI cohort track. So if there are folks who are interested in presenting, I heard Brian say that he is interested in presenting, and you can sign up for the xAPI party on May 8th, on Friday, which the website to sign up if you just want to attend is right there on the screen, www.torrancelearning.com xAPI party. Alrighty, thank you everyone. Megan, do you want to share out more about the party? Party demos are 20 minutes each, or you can do a 45-minute slot for the party. And we hope that everybody can come and participate.
Absolutely. So xAPI Party has traditionally been live and online. This year it's just online. So when we say come for the party, we mean log into Adobe Connect for the party. And we're going to run probably 9 until 6 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time on Friday the 8th. So we are currently programming this. Just sent out to the cohort a few weeks ago a call for proposals from cohort teams. So by all means, go find that. Maybe Jess can repost that. I really need to know if your team is going to present by close of business tomorrow, so that I can make that program and make sure that everybody is represented who wants to be. There are people who would like to see the projects you've done, and the work that you do actually inspires other people to get started and give it a try. So I encourage you to join us. And then it won't be just that. There'll be actually 3 tracks full of sessions across a wide swath of learning and development that day. So there's lots going on and lots of good xAPI presentations, including demos.
Megan, and we just got a team to sign up, so we're so excited for folks to be participating. So have a great rest of your week. Keep going, keep doing the amazing work that you've done, and thank you for sharing out your experiences and knowledge today. Have an awesome, awesome Thursday.